Hi, it's Coach MK, and I wanted to do two things today, other than show off my amazing shirt. Yay! One, I wanted to address that announcement that went out to my private clients yesterday. Some of you haven't been with me that long. People that have been with me for like 3 or 4 years know the issue. The reigning issue with Training Peaks is its usefulness for creating training programs on the fly is very limited, as wonderful of a system as it is. And unfortunately, it's the best one on the market. One big limiting factor is that I cannot have all the information I need at my fingertips at one time to make the next best step in your plan unless I'm sitting in front of my computer. And if you've, as I said in that note, and as evidenced by looking at me now, I've not been in front of my computer for several days. All the kids have been sick. They are now out getting a little bit of sunshine on my husband's birthday and eating stuff in the backyard so that I can get caught up in Training Peaks and then go hopefully join them or maybe take a nap. I don't know. We'll see if the cake stays down. Fingers crossed. But I digress. I wanted to talk a little bit about Training Peaks Functionality 1 because, and so that you understand a little bit more about why I'm behind. I can write big, thoughtful think pieces on the go. I can write blog posts that are several pages long, complete with links, citations, and footnotes in the bathroom on the floor with the kid in my lap. I can post to Instagram and Facebook, and I can stream in the bathroom as I've done multiple times. But of all the parts of my job that I can't really outsource is I can only do it well and do it correctly if I'm sitting in front of the computer. So I want to show you a little bit of that and what I do and what it looks like when I'm sitting at my computer, and then transition into talking a little bit about 3 days at the fair, since I made the mistake of talking about data with some of you guys, and that has not... The reason I don't talk about data much, it's not that I don't like it, it's just that it doesn't necessarily lead to good cues or good decisions or good logic, no matter how good the number is. So, because it's easy to get wrapped up in the numbers and a trajectory, that's an easy thing to track, kind of like weight. Weight's an easy thing to track, much easier than body fat. So a lot of people do that. And it doesn't mean, and if you're not careful, then the importance you're assigning that variable is greater than it deserves, because the reason you might be tracking that variable in the first place is not that it's the most representative or that its R square should be the highest. It's just that you pick the variable that's most easy to track. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, talk about Training Peaks, talk about what I see and what I don't see, and what works and what doesn't at a very high level. Excuse me as I bring this around. God, I look worse than I thought I did. I need a shower. But here we go. And obviously this will be in my YouTube repository a little bit later, as always, and I'll be sending this to my private client listserv a little bit later if you have any questions about the announcement that went out yesterday. So again, I apologize for being behind. It's just that and if I don't have a good way to be sitting in front of my computer, it gets really, really, really hard to catch up once I get behind, because a lot of this stuff I just can't outsource. So the typical issue of the entrepreneur/momtrepreneur. Okay, what you're looking at right now is what I'm looking at most of the time. So coming out of this, give me a second to see. That angle looks like it should be fine. Okay, so number one, when it comes to Training Peaks, I really have to operate in 2 screens, which, having been a trader, having worked financial markets, having been a banker, this is nothing new. I'm used to having 2 or 3 screens at the same time. It's actually great. The downside is I'm so used to it that it's hard to see everything I need to see at once if I don't have 2 screens. So when I'm making a training plan, I'm going to pick on Susan just because we're here. I'm in Susan's Training Peaks right now. I'm looking at... The first thing I want to see is all of this at the right side. So the total duration and the run duration, because a lot of the other elements don't have a duration in there. And the reason for that is it drives people crazy. People don't always log all of their accelerators, all of the drills, all of the extras. So if I have reminders in there the days you're supposed to do them, that could be a whole lot of red. And generally speaking, the sort of people that gravitate towards distance running and towards me as a coach cannot handle seeing red spots or you did not complete, especially if they did complete in their training peaks. So to cut down that back and forth to the defensive conversations that arise from that, when you go into your training peaks, you're going to see a lot of red. I promise I did all the running. I'm like, you're chill. It's cool. It's cool. We are good. We are finer than a bottle of wine. Just stop. So I've gotten to the point where I just take a lot of that out to limit those back and forths where I know you're doing the work. I can see you're doing the work. And I'm not worried. Like you never have to defend yourself to me. So every time I take a run or I take a workout, my analysis really kind of starts here. I go to Susan's dashboard and I see where she is. And this number, this pure fitness number, is... I referenced that a while ago and said I kind of, ballpark at the end of a training cycle, I would like to see it around 100. And I know that it's easy to come in here, like what Susan's going to do, like, not to pick on you, Susan, but this is an easy mistake to make if you don't know what I'm looking for, or rather, what I have excluded and why. Right? You're going to come over here and be like, okay, my fitness level is a 67. Well, it was higher back in January. It was a 69. And if we go back further than 180 days, it was higher than that a long time ago. Am I really getting fitter? And then if I look at this another way, that's not a huge incline, right? When we got started, it was a 49 and now I'm only at a 69. That's not an aggressive enough rate. I'm not going to get to 100. By race day, we've only got 9 weeks left or 8 weeks left before we taper. And I'm like, number one, your runs haven't even gotten as long as they're going to get. So I'm not worried about you getting there. And if we don't get to a raw score of 100, it doesn't mean you're not prepared, right? It's just these are rules of thumb that I'm looking at the end of each week, at the end of each month, when I'm looking at this summary column, when I get started. I'm making sure that the total training stress I'm putting on you week by week doesn't rise by too much. So, and then what you've completed versus what I've asked you to do isn't too wildly different. And don't, again, I wouldn't spin out about that differential too much. All it means to me is I've accounted for the stress accurately, or I haven't, and here's why. So if you go back to that nice little spreadsheet, that Google Doc that I put up and shared on my Facebook page the other day, where I talked through preparation and said, all right, my marathon and half marathon plans are 20 weeks long. Here are all the minutes you spend running. Here are the minutes you spend doing the other stuff. 3 days at the fair. It's a shorter plan. It's 13 weeks long. In 13 weeks, we will be running only slightly more minutes than I would have people running a 20-week marathon plan. And the strengthening is quite a bit less. So the time we spend strengthening and the time we spend drilling, this number, and that is about 22% of your total time spent doing things. And hear me closely on this. That's not reflected in training peaks for 2 reasons. Number one, that whole conversation about having red boxes. It doesn't go anywhere productive. And a lot of these are 5-minute or 10-minute circuits. And even if you filled them all in, it still doesn't help me. It still does not lead to a productive conversation, which is not about your psyche. It's not or your neuroses as much as it is about the limited functionality of a system that is dependent upon heart rate. But it's really not about the system. We just don't have we don't have a good way to standardize the impact of weight training from person to person at any point in time. And to give you an example, if Susan goes out for a run for an hour and Julie goes out for a run for an hour, it doesn't really matter if it's the same run or not. Because due to things like heart rate and power and VAM, we have standardized single plane, single sport, and multi-sport activities very, very, very well. Meaning if you're swimming, if you're biking, if you're running, if you're walking, if you're skiing, that you're probably not skiing in 3 planes of motion. You're probably going downhill or flat or skiing uphill, right? I mean, and you're not switching it up a whole lot. You're not all of a sudden, this like left and right levitating, right? It's one continuous action. And we're looking at the impact and how much impact how much stress that puts in your body over time in a time block. And we can standardize that from person to person. What we can't do is have Julie stand next to Susan and do the same strength workout and standardize the impact of that strength on Susan to the impact of that strength on Julie. And that's where the training log comes in. I have no way of knowing. I can usually guess, after a couple of days, it's from your training logs. My glutes are really sore. Or if I see a number that's completely out of whack, I'm like, what's hurting? Because a lot of people don't want to tell me because they don't want something to be wrong. It's what we do. We've been trained not to whine, but I can't do my job if I don't know what hurts. So what that means is we also can't standardize. If you're doing squats next to each other, maybe one person's going lower, maybe than the other person. Maybe one person already had a sore knee coming into it. There are a lot of factors, but we can't really standardize. I'm just like, here, do it, it's fine. But that net output is not reflected in training peaks precisely because we can't standardize it. The stuff that you do is so short, those 10-minute strength circuits every single day, they add up really quickly in your body, but they don't really show up at all in training peaks because your heart rate doesn't get high enough for long enough to trigger impact in the system, especially if what you did hurts a whole lot and slows you down the next day. Does that make sense? So if you're generating a whole lot of power like today and you feel really good and then I change the strength around and you're like, oh my God, this is terrible. It might take 3 or 4 days before that's reflected in training peaks. And I don't know that you're overtraining until you were overtrained. And that doesn't come from the running portion. It comes from the strength. So it's a lot to sew together, but that is why I have to stay on top of these training logs every single day because that's the only backstop. If I only came in and looked at the end of once at the end of each week, we could already be in a bad place. And that's generally speaking is what most coaches do, and not to denigrate them, but the level, what I'm putting into this isn't necessarily what you're paying for, right? You're paying me per month, effectively an hourly rate, when I'm probably putting in way more than an hour at the end of each week. And that's okay. That's why the asymmetry that exists in the market for personal coaching has made it really hard to make a full-time living as a personal coach because you have to be constantly seeking a new pipeline of clients, and I don't really want to get into that business. So I do this for me. I do it. I consider it my R&D time, and I like being part of it. So again, I say none of this to make anyone feel guilty. Just understand that there is a lot that goes into it. It's a whole lot of work, and not everyone needs a whole lot of that level of work all the time. Because the 2 days I can monitor this stuff from the bathroom, but I can't monitor changes or additions. So the people that are waiting for me to put things into Training Peaks, I can do it, but I can't see these numbers and I can't see your load and I can't see, it wouldn't be as good and it wouldn't be the job that I think you're paying me to do. So, I could do it, but it wouldn't be good and I'd rather give you quality. The other thing to remember about when it comes to this, guys, especially the 3 days at the fair people, right now, I have you doing, if you go back to this spreadsheet, and I know you can't see it, but the number of minutes you spend strengthening and drilling relative to running, it's about almost a quarter. Almost 25% of your time is spent doing something that isn't reflected in Training Peaks, right? All of that stuff adds up. So if you're coming into your dashboard and you're looking at your raw fitness number and you're seeing it's a 68, just remember should be roughly 25% higher than it actually is, because that's how much work you're doing that's adding up in your body that is not reflected in that raw score or in Training Peaks, not just because it avoids a conversation that we don't need to have. It only takes up more of my time as I tell you it's fine, I believe you, it's fine. But also because it would create a whole lot more email for me, and it doesn't really mean anything, because even if we were to put all that in there, very consistently, wouldn't change the output much. So what you see, oh coach, but I put mine in all the time. Sarah's going to come at me. I put mine in every single time. And sometimes I get a training score of 3. And I'm like, yeah, but if you're super sore, the person who, 2 people could do the same workout. One is incredibly sore and the other isn't. And both have a training stress score of 3. And that 3 doesn't account for the pain. I can't guess that the muscle soreness is there until they run the next day or the day after that. Does it make sense? So we're very limited right now from a science perspective of having a way to standardize the impact of a single strength session on the body beyond the data points of heart rate, because even trying to come up with wattage for something like a bicep curl or a push-up is almost impossible. We've only in recent years been able to, and I mean by recent years, I mean like in the last 18 months, come up with a very accurate way of measuring wattage output from the run, and only in a foot pod from Stride. That thing, if it measures on your wrist, it's not accurate. It's a guess at best. It's math. So that's my that's pretty much all I had to say about that. So if you see this number and it's been spinning you out, remember, if you're doing 3 days at the fair, or if you're doing any of my other training plans, and you're doing hashtag all the things, all the strength, all the drills, all the warm-ups, all the cool downs, all of that extra work is not reflected in there, and that's about a quarter of your time too. So take whatever fitness number you've got, add 25% to it, and you'll see you're right where I want you to be, right where you want to be. I'm sorry I threw out that I would like to get you to 100 figure without pointing this out to you. But yeah, what you see in Training Peaks isn't accurate. I automatically add a quarter to everything you do if I know you're consistent about doing all the things. And really, realistically, my 3 days at the fair people are more than everybody else because they are terrified of what they're about to do, and they should be because it's crazy. People are like, marathon, yeah, whatever, I don't need the strength. I'm like, okay. I don't have to convince people that they need more strength and more work for 50 fucking miles. There you go. I hope that made some sense. I hope you feel coached and loved and winning at life. And also, but I guess the key takeaway is I'm sitting, for those of you that are still waiting for updates from me in Training Peaks, I'm now sitting down in Training Peaks. And God willing, I'm finally going to get everything updated. You're coached, you're loved. Go win at Sunday. I think, is it Sunday? Oh gosh, it's my husband's birthday. Happy birthday, dear husband. Yay. Have fun. Bye.